What's going on, my people, my people, my people? This is Michael Anthony here for Black Panther Wakanda Week. I'm here with a very, very special guest, Dr. Claude Barnes. And what we're here for today is because Black Panther Wakanda Forever is coming out on Thursday. Please come out and check it out. Matter of fact, I'm having a screening of it coming up. Let's see, where's my poster at? Oh, I think I don't have it right now. Oh, here it is. For my film right there, it is the premiere experience that's going to be happening this Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Alamo Draft House in Woodbridge, Virginia. Please come out and see it. Have a really nice space. It's going to be in the largest theater at the Alamo Draft House. So please come out. But what it is that I wanted to do to not kind of talk about, the screening, which I think I'll get to a little bit later, is that today I wanted to speak to Dr. Barnes about the Black Panther Party. Because most of us, they have seen the show Black Panther or the movie Black Panther. We know that there's some undertones about the Black Panther Party here. And Dr. Barnes, he's a renowned professor. He's written many books on black student protests. Matter of fact, me and him worked on a film together. I think we're right now on the Walls That Bleed Facebook page as well. So shout out Aggie Pride to all the Aggies out there. And just wanted to bring him on so we can kind of dissect a little bit of this. So without further ado, Dr. Barnes, how you doing, my brother?
Doing well. Thanks for inviting me for this interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. So, let's just jump right on in it. Now, just before we get into the Black Panther Party, part, what is your thoughts about Black Panther, the character?
I think Black Panther, the character, is unique from several respects because most of the time when you see movies, when you read books, blacks are portrayed in a subservient manner and in a way in which they always have to sort of be controlled by their oppressor or by people who don't look like us. So Black Panther Party and the Black Panther the movie deserve a lot of congratulations, a lot of accolades because it's one of those films where blacks are presented as heroes, and not just blacks are presented as heroes, superhero characters, but the culture is portrayed in such a way, in such a manner that people begin to think about where it is that black people came from. Africa, for a number of years in different generations, Africa is always projected as an area that's a jungle and that civilization had nothing to do with Africa, when in fact the opposite is true. The first civilization that we know about came from the continent of Africa. So the movie sort of picks up some of these themes and presents them to a larger audience.
Absolutely. And a matter of fact, Stan Lee, one of his inspirations for the character Black Panther came from the civil rights movement. Now, as far as how history tells us, is that Black Panther, the character, was first introduced to Marvel in a Fantastic Four comic book in June or July. I think it's June of 1966. July 1966. And then the official founding of the Black Panther Party was founded in October of 1966. So that's like
That's
really
correct.
close, close in timeline, so, but the way that T'Challa and, with the vibranium and the technology and the forward thinking about Africa, where do you feel like was the connection between the Black Panther character in Marvel and the Black Panther Party, or black radical politics, as you would say?
Well, put it like this. I think black politics um, had an influence on the creation of this character um, during the time that Stan Lee was writing his comic about the Black Panther. The Black movement was having an impact on American culture in a very profound way. The Black Panther logo, in fact, was being used by people who were involved in the movement, particularly in the South, were trying to fight against Jim Crow segregation. So a number of organizations, including uh, the, uh, the Democratic Freedom Organization, came out of Alabama, and their logo was a Black Panther. All right, so that's not the first time that we see the panther used as an important logo.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that Stan Lee uses probably, in fact, comes from the Black nationalist movement and Black civil rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
because that was going on in America at that time. It's hard to escape the
Right.
influence of the Black movement at that particular time. So we have to give Stanley a little credit. However, we got to give the Black nationalist movement and the civil rights movement more credit for these ideas.
Mm. And some of those ideas was like black radical politics, you know, and of course when you put radical there, it sort of goes against status quo, you know, like it's disrupting anything. Could you explain to us like what black radical politics is?
Uh, in a nutshell, because we don't have time to expound on
To
a
really
book and a
dissect it,
book
right,
list.
right, right.
But radical politics developed after the civil rights movement was basically slowing down. It was slowing down in many ways because it achieved some of its objectives.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One of the things that the civil rights movement did, it helped break up uh, Jim Crow segregation
Mm-hmm.
from the standpoint that some of the practices in America were eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the symbols of white racism were eliminated. The signs came down. The practice of white colored fountains and black colored fountains,
Mm-hmm.
the practice of blacks sitting on the back of the bus, all these type of issues
Mm-hmm.
were confronted by the civil rights movement, and basically they were wiped away as a result of their protests and activism.
Mm-hmm.
However, this didn't go far enough because despite these accomplishments, black people still found themselves at the bottom of society, and they didn't obtain some of the fruits of being a citizen in American society.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main problems, of course, is police brutality probably got worse after the civil rights movement.
Mm.
So police brutality was a serious issue. Not only
As it
that,
still is.
it still is absolutely right. And not only that, as far as education is concerned, the civil rights movement did not impact education, especially when it come to terms with the role of blacks in creating civilization,
Mm-hmm.
the role of blacks in using technology, and the role of blacks as far as not being associated with uh, the pictorial presentation of Africa as backward in a jungle,
Mm.
et cetera, et cetera. But in fact, they were the source of what we call civilization.
Mm.
So the movie presents this in a particular way, and I hope people do appreciate the cultural aspect of this movie. But getting back to
Mm-hmm.
radical politics was about actually the destruction of American capitalism,
Mm.
because American capitalism did not provide its citizens of basic needs
Mm-hmm.
that they would need to have to be basic citizens in the United States and other places.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to talk about, Black nationalists were trying to talk about the need for health care for all,
Mm-hmm.
the need for an education for all,
Mm-hmm.
um, the need, of course, to be safe
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are. Don't have to worry about being shot or locked up or being disrespected because of the color of your skin.
Mm.
Um, the Black Panther Party, in particular, had a 10-point program that outlined these objectives.
Mm.
But radical politics talked about um, taking apart American capitalism and replacing it with a system that was a lot more um, equal, a lot more beneficial, a lot more just in terms of eliminating police brutality, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So radical black politics concern all those issues. Let
Mm.
me go back to education.
Mm-hmm.
Education sort of taught us to be subservient
Mm-hmm.
for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't have our own our own education. We didn't have our own means to portray us in a realistic manner.
Right.
So the Black Panther Party and other nationalists actually created schools
Mm.
to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Independent schools like Malcolm X Liberation University, the Lena Horne University in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and other universities and black schools were created during this time to solve this problem. And of course, many blacks started to write and publish material that challenged this, this dominant perspective about how blacks fit in society. So that was an important part of radical black politics as well. And I guess we can't leave out the role that armed self-defense fit in radical black politics. Because again, civil rights was good, but they didn't confront the use of violence and the need for self-defense in the black community. And the Black Panther Party and other organizations began to arm themselves. And not only that, arm themselves in a public manner. They would have demonstrations where they would carry their weapons. And this, of course, antagonized a lot of people in the social structure. And they saw, as a FBI director Herbert Hoover put it, they were the most threatening terrorist organization in the United States. That was Edgar Hoover's description. So those are some of the ideas I think that fit with what one might call radical revolutionary organizations like the Black Panther Party. But
And,
there were others.
and
There were
see,
others like us in California. There were others like the brothers who put together the resistance in places like Alabama, in places like Greensboro, North Carolina. And I presume we'll talk about that later.
well, see, actually, we can jump right into it. So, because, and I appreciate that explanation, as far as that, because it was like this inch by inch. It was like, black people just wasn't getting enough. And like, as you said, as the different civil rights bills that started coming out, desegregation, then it was a tighter police force. Then neighborhoods started getting mixed around, and then money wasn't being allocated throughout the black community, that created this sort of tension in this powder keg to where even Martin Luther King himself, even, before he was, assassinated, was saying that he didn't, that dream that he once had, was starting to turn into a nightmare.
People might not know this, but I think one of the reasons that he was assassinated is because he was becoming closer to a more radical ideology. Him and Malcolm X actually began to talk about the same issues. So I think the civil rights movement, in fact, was probably getting ready to make an adjustment or move in a more radical direction. But organizations like the Black Panther Party couldn't wait. Other organizations in the black community could not wait for this transformation, so they got out front and probably left the civil rights movement behind. Of course, there were elements in the civil rights movement that did not want this leap anyway. They thought, as you can imagine, they thought they were going too far.
But then, but it feels like it was so left and right, like could have been a meeting in the middle, of what the civil rights are saying, okay, we're going to show up. But as soon as they start swinging on you, you got to fight back. At least by the late 60s, but because
actually, there was some of that. Okay. There was some of it, not a lot of that. When you go back and look at the civil rights movement, a lot that doesn't get written about are organizations like the Deacons for Defense, Deacons for Defense. These are organizations that existed in Louisiana. They were created in Bogalusa, Louisiana, and they had arms. In many cases, they protected the civil rights workers. So we don't actually hear about that, but they were moving toward a more model that was close to the Black Panther model. And then, of course, there were people like Robert Williams from Monroe, North Carolina, who wrote a book called Negroes with Guns, which a lot of people don't know about. But people in places like North Carolina were actually moving in that direction, but the Black Panther Party probably leaped ahead of most organizations at that particular point in time.
And and of course, you yourself was associated with an organization back in the 1960s. And of course,
yes, that's true.
And of course, for the people that would like to understand a little bit more about me and your relationship, I'm a filmmaker. I make documentary films. I'm the owner and creative director of Pure Flow Productions, where we do creative communications agency. And Dr. Barnes is retired professor and author. Actually, no, I'm sorry, current author. But retired professor. And the way that me and Dr. Barnes know each other is because Dr. Barnes got in a little scuffle back in 1969. He was rubbing some feathers the wrong way. And so there's a documentary that we both produced, and we do have some updates about that as well, hopefully soon. called Walls That Bleed, and it's about the 1969 Dudley A&T uprising, and that is whenever a student at Dudley High School was running for student council president, but the administration felt that he was a subversive character, part of an association like the Black Panther Party, and so they took his name off the ballot. The student body wrote his name in on the ballot. He won by over 800 votes, but the school administration still didn't recognize this. And of course, we're talking about this. I hope everybody went out to go vote today, whether it was write-in, early voting, or anything. So it's just apropos how we're talking about this today. But then, because this democratic right was taken away from the students in 1969 in Greensboro, North Carolina, they started protesting, exercising their democratic right to do so. Police showed up, said that they had to move. Students said, "This is public property. We can be here if we want to." And of course, the word that you kept saying throughout this conversation is police brutality ensued. Police started tear gassing and beating on students. It filtered over to North Carolina A&T State University, where then commenced a 3-day gun battle between the entire city police department and 650 National Guardmen. And that student at the high school whose name was removed was Dr. Claude Barnes. And so all that stuff happened because so I guess the question, of course I know the answer, but for our audience out there that's never met you, could you tell us a little bit about that time?
All right. As you mentioned, we were under the influence. We were looking at what the Black Panther Party was doing. And so many students wanted to follow uh, the example of the Black Panther Party. In fact, there was a local organization in Greensboro and in Winston-Salem that were uh, basically following the lead of the Black Panther Party. And in Winston-Salem, they actually became a chapter
Hmm.
of the Black Panther Party. But in Greensboro, we began to stage demonstrations. And like the Black Panther Party, we showed up with arms to protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, the administration was right. I was a subversive. uh, I was part of protests,
Mm-hmm.
and we did try peaceful protests on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to protest 50 yards away from the school because that was public property.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can imagine, the rules don't apply to people who look like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
So the head of the public relations department at the Greensboro Public Schools
Mm-hmm.
called the police, and I'll never forget
Mm-hmm.
his words to the police was, "Arrest them niggers."
Mm-hmm.
So the police attacked, beat us pretty bad. They beat us. They beat our women, and people who were leaving the cafeteria and saw all that was happening. They ran out to join us. It basically escalated into a fight between the students and the police.
Mm-hmm.
We got beat up, and we ended up running to our brothers over at North Carolina A&T State University. And at the time, there was an organization that was being formed
Mm-hmm.
called the Student Organization for Black Unity.
Mm-hmm.
And when they saw us coming in there meeting, smelling of tear gas and bloody, they stopped the meeting and they started a march back to Dudley High School.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically shut Dudley down.
Mm-hmm.
It went back to the campus. This is when police were called. And the students, of course, were armed, and because many of them were veterans of the Vietnam War, and they had their weapons. And basically, they fought back. The police got beat pretty badly the first night. So the second night, the mayor called in the National Guard, 600 troops, and with armed personnel carriers, helicopters, the works. So on the third night, the students decided, okay, we don't want to get massacred. So they started to sneak out of the building, and only one person got killed. That was Willie Ernest Grimes. He was shot in the back by the Greensboro police. And of course, this motivated us to continue to organize and to create other organizations that would try to prevent a similar event from happening after that occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
But to summarize, the Walls That Bleed, the movie that documents these affairs, and the entire protests and insurrection that took place between Dudley and A&T was probably the most successful example of self-defense by young people, a group of students that probably happened in America at that time. Most protests ended rather rapidly after the police showed up. People would basically give up,
Mm-hmm.
except for Kent State, where the National Guard actually shot and killed about 4 students.
Mm-hmm.
So we were basically organized a successful self-defense. And of course, that created a lot of uh, drama and some problems for some people in the administration.
Mm-hmm. I know it did. I know it did. And but the organization that you were part of, what was the organization? What was the name of the organization?
The organization that we were part of, again, our protest spilled over into the creation of this organization.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Student Organization for Black Unity, or SOBU. Student Organization for Black Unity was a national organization. We had chapters uh, mainly in the South, in all the Black HBCUs, and a few other places. And our idea was similar to what the Panthers had, but we're more interested in saving Black schools, making sure that we got a proper education, and many issues like that. So I became a member of SOBU and began to organize on the campus of places like A&T. And this probably needs to be noted as well.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of some of these activities, the state legislature wanted to close down all the Black schools
Mm-hmm.
in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we organized a project called the Save and Change Black Schools Project. It was not only aimed at what happened in North Carolina, but throughout the South, where there were many Black schools, historically Black colleges and universities,
Mm-hmm.
HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
But we organized a protest that basically surrounded the state legislature
Mm-hmm.
in North Carolina with about 10,000 students, if not more,
Mm-hmm.
shut down the legislature because they were about to pass legislation
Mm-hmm.
that would close A&T, Winston-Salem State,
Mm-hmm.
and the other Black schools in the state. So this made them rethink that legislation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the same thing happened in other places.
Right.
And as a result, I would say that SOBU are not the only reason, but one of the main reasons that HBCUs survived that period.
Mm.
So that was one of the goals and one of the accomplishments of SOBU.
Right.
SOBU was also related to other organizations. I'm not sure if you want me to talk about the other ones,
Well, you can
like
mention them.
the
Yeah. Yeah. If you mention the
African
names of them.
Liberation Support Committee,
Mm-hmm.
which was founded in Greensboro,
Mm-hmm.
which was an important organization as far as spreading and making connections between the movement in America and the movement in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the African Liberation Support Committee did.
Mm-hmm.
They had a weekly newspaper that came out of Greensboro, and that newspaper had circulation across the United States and in some countries in Africa.
Mm.
So that came out of Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So many organizations
Mm-hmm.
came out of Greensboro. Malcolm X Liberation University, which
Mm-hmm.
tried to put together a higher education for Black people
Mm-hmm.
that was different from the education they were getting at these universities,
Mm-hmm.
which inspired other universities to be created in other states like Texas,
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana, and some other places.
Mm-hmm.
So all those organizations came out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And in one of my papers, I talk about the missing pages of the civil rights movement. One of those missing pages were the role that nationalists in North Carolina played in that movement. The Black Panther Party is pretty clear, but there were other nationalist organizations that need to be included in the talk and scholarship and education about this particular movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there were so many or different organizations that was populating around that time. But of course, the public enemy number one, because J. Edgar Hoover said so, was the Black Panther Party. So then everybody sort of got associated with them. So in the organization, whenever you were in high school, were you guys being infiltrated? Because we do have that movie now, Judas and the Black Messiah, about how the FBI infiltrated Fred Hampton's Chicago Black Panther office. Were there things like that was going on during that time, where they was trying to collude you young people in order to break the law?
I'm not going to say is that a joke, but we were definitely subjected to FBI surveillance. In fact, they sent people who were supposedly members of the Black Panther Party from New York, who were basically informants for the FBI. I'll never forget this one informant whose name was Nundin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there was a so-called African name, but basically, he was an informant, and he tried to get us to organize unprovoked attacks against the police so that we could basically get killed. And some of the Black Panther Party's members from New York informed us that this guy is an informant.
Mm-hmm.
So he never really did make any headway among our organization. But many other organizations, informants were able to infiltrate, and this was one of the reasons why the movement basically disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Infiltration on one hand and suppression of violence against these movements on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So violence and oppression, that was one of the main reasons that the movement tended to disappear. But that wasn't the only reason. I'm not sure if you want me to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But co-optation, repression, and internal conflict. I
Mm-hmm.
would say those are three major reasons why the movement disappeared. And what I mean by internal conflict is ideological conflict became uh, a way that we began to argue about different ways to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, or Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
Those became the three main ideologies that talk about taking people in different directions. And we began to fight against one another
Mm-hmm.
and move away from mass organization, but became elitist organizations. And this, I think, played a major role in the disappearance of the Black nationalist organizations, in addition to COINTELPRO, the
Mm-hmm.
FBI, and the police infiltrating our organizations,
Mm-hmm.
tapping our phones, and so forth.
Right, right. Just getting all up in the sauce, just because people wanted to have some equality. Basically, power to the people was the
That's right.
slogan, and we're still fighting for that today.
Absolutely.
And of course, just for everybody who maybe just be joining us, my name is Michael Anthony, owner and creative director of Pure Flow Productions, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Claude Barnes, and mentor at that. And we're here because this is Wakanda Week. Today is voting day. And so we just want to bring up these topics and, just to kind of remind everybody, I do have a screening that's coming up if you live in Woodbridge, Virginia. That's at the Alamo Draft House, Wakanda Forever, trying to create a nice experience, for people, because especially as a cultural film as this is and what it meant, and how people sort of feel the connections, especially with Chadwick Boseman now no longer with us. I think, Black has just been getting beat down a lot, and this is just one of those times where it feels like, okay, we could be Black and proud. It's almost like Juneteenth in November, is how it feels to me a little bit. And I just wanted to have a private screening in a nice theater, where people could just sit back, relax. It's recline seating. You can have dinner inside, have drinks, all kinds of stuff. And, it's just something I want to kind of throw together. I know, Dr. Barnes, you're out in Texas. If you wasn't out there, brother, you would have a ticket. You would have a ticket.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, talking about, now transitioning to sort of current day, we had, obviously, in 2020, before then, in 2012, sort of after Trayvon Martin was murdered, then the Black Lives Matter name and movement started kicking up, and then we had, Fidel Castillo, I believe is his name, and Eric Gardner, and I mean the list goes on and on. Matter of fact, I'm wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt right now, and all the way up until sort of a powder keg event happened in 2020, whenever we had the pandemic, people are locked in, and then George Floyd gets murdered by a police officer. We see it on national TV, and everything is just blown up, and the Black Lives Matter movement gets nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Fast forward a couple of months later, a few months ago, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter has been implicated in some financial, improprieties, some not dealing with finances too well. And right now it's sort of taking a hit because now Candace Owens has created a documentary called, I think it's called The Biggest Lie, which is sort of criticizing and critiquing and saying that the Black Lives Matter movement was just something that was a hoax the entire time. what is your feelings like? Does Black, and I guess that's what my question is. Just to kind of plainly, does Black Lives Matter still have the same ring to it now, or where are we at with that?
Well, unfortunately, Black Lives Matter, uh, I'm not sure if I call it a movement,
Mm,
but Black Lives Matter does not have the same credibility as it used to have when it first showed up on the scene.
mm-hmm,
And a lot of it has to do with the leadership of the organization. I think one of the problems of that whole period is that organizations don't seem to have good links with the grassroots. Not any permanent links. They're temporary links that take place.
mm-hmm,
But we need more organizations
mm-hmm,
as opposed to one organization to organize what we're trying to do in getting people involved with the vote, getting people involved in efforts to eliminate police brutality. It's going to continue unless we uh, unify many organizations to fight against this problem.
mm-hmm,
You can't have one organization out front just trying to deal with this.
mm-hmm,
But you got to have many organizations dealing with this problem. There's got to be unity
mm-hmm,
among those organizations. There's got to be discussions too about how to move forward
mm-hmm,
because police brutality is only one issue. It's linked to many other issues. So you got to talk about police brutality and the rest of the issues that are linked to and the oppressed Black people and the people who look like you and me. This is
right.
a real serious problem. But the
And
problem of economic
mm-hmm,
oppression,
mm-hmm,
the problem of the lack of health care, the problem of still the problem of education, you know,
mm-hmm,
and all these problems that still exist. And we need more than just one organization, one or two, because the Black vote matters. It's out there too, but
mm-hmm,
we need more organizations like that. And I would suggest that we need more radical organizations
mm-hmm,
to pick up where we left off. Now, we were a different generation. And excuse me for quoting uh, one of my favorite authors, Frantz Fanon,
mm-hmm,
who wrote The Wretched of the Earth.
mm-hmm,
But his observation was each generation must find its goal and pursue it. Um, we all have different goals.
mm-hmm,
I'm not saying that my generation has completed its mission, obviously not. But we need to see more young people stand forward
mm-hmm,
and connect with the old people and try to reinvigorate
mm-hmm,
a movement that has long-standing
mm-hmm,
impact and
mm-hmm,
not just attach itself to one issue.
mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I think, and also one thing about that organization, which of course, I'm the premise and everything that it was going for, I think everybody's behind, that, but they operate almost like the Occupy Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
where there were people who were just operating in their own bubbles in these communities. So then, like Oakland would have their own chapter that they were just self-governing, and then New York, and then Atlanta. But then, if somebody in Louisiana, if they happen to do something wrong, like they might be doing something wrong with the money, or they might got arrested, then they put a bad name on the entire organization. At least
Right.
within the Black Panther Party in the '60s, they tried to at least connect, and try to have the same ideology. I mean, they had everything written down. Even though Black Lives Matter, you can go to their website. They do have some bylaws, but it's something you had to go search that stuff out. With the Black Panther Party, they were handing stuff out on the street, and it did seem like it was an organization that they knew they had to demolish,
Well,
from the
I
outside.
think one major difference is that the Black Panther Party had clear leadership,
Mm,
and their chapters had fidelity to that leadership.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
People like Bobby Seale,
mm-hmm,
people like Huey Newton, lesser known figures like Eldridge Cleaver, who
mm-hmm,
wrote a book called Soul on Ice.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, Other people in leadership positions, other organizations, and then the other chapters
mm-hmm,
had faith in the leadership, had fidelity to the leadership.
mm-hmm,
So it was very difficult for somebody to run astray
mm-hmm,
of what the basic goal of the party was without serious consequences.
mm-hmm,
You would be exiled from the organization if you basically didn't follow um, the guidelines that the
mm-hmm,
organization was associated with.
mm-hmm,
So that's a problem with
mm-hmm,
some of the organizations today. They
mm-hmm,
have their own sphere of operation.
Mm-hmm.
There was no overarching organization to try to provide leadership through these organizations,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, I know. It's just sad because now, even though the words still ring true, but now the slogan, I don't know. It just I don't know. It's kind of sad.
Yeah,
With
who's going to pick up the mantle?
well now it feels like it's going to be something else because it's a hashtag. We're all about hashtags these days. so
Right,
so
right.
like what's going to be the new hashtag or something you can put on a shirt. Because I don't know if that one's going to still be able to. I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know. We ain't got to get into it right now because we ain't got enough time, and we got to let some people get back to their day. But Dr. Barnes, one other question I want to get into, before I let you go, we can, kind of discuss a couple more things. But one thing is today is election day, you know, and at least somebody who had some definitely politics that were radical of its time was Malcolm X, and he had a speech called "The Ballot or the Bullet." Do you remember that?
Oh
Um,
yeah, oh yeah,
you
oh
know,
yeah. One of his most influential speeches,
yes.
and one of the probably sources of the Black Panther Party in terms of ideology.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah, and if you, we're not going to recite it. I'm not going to show it here. Just YouTube it, and you'll see, what it means. But whenever it's election time, and I hear his speech, it feels like because I think he wrote in 1961, 1962, I believe, and it still rings true today. What are your thoughts on that? As far as it's either the ballot or the bullet, like because it does, and we know this for a fact that white supremacy is in politics.
Yeah,
You
I'm not
know,
sure if I'd had that dichotomy. I think it's the ballot and the bullet.
ballot and the bullet. Okay, right, right,
That's
right.
how I would
Uh,
reframe it a little bit,
okay, okay, okay.
because we need elected officials who have uh, ideas like we have,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm,
that's not enough.
mm-hmm,
Voting is not enough.
mm-hmm,
We need organizations that are going to protect us. And obviously, we need organizations who are going to protect the vote
mm-hmm,
because you got organizations like the Proud Boys who are trying to intimidate voters.
mm-hmm,
You got those types of organizations that want to influence elections
mm-hmm,
and basically turn the country over to completely extreme right wing type of organizations where
mm-hmm,
it's not any real choice in terms of politics.
mm-hmm,
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that party politics is the way. There are neoliberal Democrats who are not concerned about any radical changes to the system. They're trying to protect the system as well.
mm-hmm,
But then you got on the other side, people trying to implement and create authoritarian and fascist society where
mm-hmm,
you have one leader
mm-hmm,
and whatever he says goes. And basically, you're talking about mass murder if you
mm-hmm,
don't agree with the people who are providing so called leadership. And the best example we have of that is what happened in Nazi Germany.
mm-hmm,
You had to be completely loyal to the leadership
mm-hmm,
and you had to look like the leadership.
mm-hmm,
So, and you had to have the same, uh, I wouldn't say religious point of view, but the same spiritual point of view
mm-hmm,
as the Nazis. Otherwise, your fate is death.
mm-hmm,
And in many ways, the idea of the Nazis was you got to be in good shape too, because people with disabilities
mm-hmm,
did not survive
mm-hmm,
in Nazi Germany.
mm-hmm,
So we're looking at a situation in this country where it's one of the possible alternatives if the progressive thinkers and movement does not come together in some kind of coalition to prevent this from happening. Now, I'm not suggesting that one election can do this,
mm-hmm,
but over time, that's
mm-hmm,
one of the options that could firmly be in place if people don't organize
mm-hmm,
and attempt to fight this particular trend in American politics.
mm-hmm,
So I hope people don't sit back and think that voting is all you have to do. We got to go beyond voting. That's just one methodology. We
mm-hmm,
got to organize ourselves again for self-defense and
mm-hmm,
be able to make a change in this system. I hate to say it, but by force if necessary.
mm-hmm. I know they tried to January 6th. And we already know if that would have been a Black Lives Matter protest.
Well, no, there was just a peaceful protest.
Although, yeah, yeah, that's what they, yeah, okay. Even though,
Well, you know what? And one of the things that need to be pointed out,
yes.
these people who basically tried to take over the government, extreme riot,
Mm-hmm.
they had the camouflage
Yes.
of white skin.
Mm-hmm.
Because believe me, if that had been people look like you and me, the conclusion would have been completely different. It would have been a massacre,
Oh, if
right?
just what
And
happened in
anybody who was left would have been locked up immediately.
any of the
And it's
places that are,
absolutely
yes.
disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
These people that are going to trial, they're getting probation where they can sit at home.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting 1 or 2 year sentences.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely ridiculous when these
Mm-hmm.
people were trying to commit murder and take over the government and shoot elected officials. And you got people who are part of, at least the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
who are saying that this was just a peaceful protest.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting people elected who are part of this extremist white ideology,
Mm-hmm.
white supremacy. These people are getting elected to
Mm-hmm.
public office,
Mm-hmm.
and that's absolutely disgusting. If
Mm-hmm.
if this country begins to turn in that direction, and right now, I hate to say it, but that could be one of the viable alternatives if we don't wake up
Yeah.
and begin to organize something against this process.
No, it's the sleeping giant, and I live in the Washington D.C. area, so I was here whenever Lafayette Square, which is now Black Lives Matter Plaza, after during the riots when they had the armored cars and the tear gas and the rubber bullets and was tagging people, arresting people. They were taking people's license plates, which they just confirmed on the news that Trump was trying to get some sort of terrorist sort of ploy on protesters, especially in Portland. So then he can drum up that there's a terrorist threat to then help his election. Because whenever
Right,
there's
right,
terrorist things, even though we know what was really going on, but
exactly.
that was in June of 2020. January, 2021, when the January 6th happened, those people just walked right in to the Capitol. I mean, they just
Yeah,
walked right in. So to see, the same amount of people in front of one was in front of the White House, the other one was in front of the Capitol, and like you said, the camouflage of their skin. When people were dispersed immediately.
right,
Now windows did get broke. They did have a fence up during that whole time. If you ever go to the White House on the back lawn, you can always walk through and around. They cut
right.
that all off. But then January 6th, they put the fence up after
Yeah,
after
yeah.
the attack.
And
Um,
what happened to the fences that detect weapons, right?
mm-hmm,
They didn't work. I mean, they knew people were coming in with weapons.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There was no effort
No,
to prevent this from happening.
no, it wasn't.
And let's be absolutely clear. This wasn't a surprise.
Mm-mm.
I mean, the intelligence people knew this
Mm-hmm,
was going to happen,
mm-hmm,
and they didn't do anything.
mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
makes you wonder what the story is.
People were hitting me up. My mom and cousins and siblings was hitting me up like, "You okay?" When January 6th happened, because they know I live in the area, and be like, "Man, everybody that look like
I'm
me
talking
might
about
have the
months
same ideas."
before January 6th. There was
Mm-hmm.
all kind of chatter on the internet that this event was being planned. So it's not something that was a
Oh,
surprise
wasn't a
to
surprise.
the local officials,
No.
but they didn't do anything to prepare for.
Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. Yeah, and that's I guess that's the unfortunate thing. So yeah, please go out and vote, organize, get involved. Just get involved, whether it's with a nonprofit, a outreach program, volunteer, even your church. Just get involved, and yeah, and like you said, just get in movements, but just not be evil, nasty people, because that's what this is all about. It's just man, I'm about to. I don't want to curse. I'm trying to make this family friendly, and I don't have
Family
the beep.
friendly.
Yeah, I don't have the beep number on here, but or the bleep sound effect on here. But no, I think that's about it. I definitely appreciate your time, Dr. Barnes. Again, my name is Michael Anthony. I'm here with my good friend Dr. Claude Barnes. We're here talking about the Black Panther Party as well as Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Since we're leading up to the week, today's election day, I needed to bring my friend on, see how he was doing. I ain't seen him in a while, and just rap with him for a while, because we always get into these debates, and I was like, we need to do this in front of the people. One other person I would like to acknowledge is Tanya White. She is her company's The Right Touch, and TKM, I believe. Hold on, I tear it up. TMK Staffing and Recruiting. She's the owner operator that I met up here in Virginia, and she's helping me sponsor this Black Panther Wakanda Forever event. And so her logos are right in the corners. I'll definitely put her emails and contact information in the description of this video. Obviously, Dr. Barnes, you know, you have your stuff up there. Is there anything you would like to tell the people as far as stuff that you're working on, how people can reach you, anything like that?
Well, I worked on a couple of things. I still believe that not enough scholars have talked about this period from a more realistic point of view. Um, not a, not enough scholars who look like you and me. Uh, of course, a lot of other scholars, or what I call white custodians of the Black experience, that are writing about this period. But I'm still trying to write about that particular period and put a different kind of spin on the events of that particular time. That's one of my main goals in retirement is to try to get a better story out there about what happened to us and also make some suggestions about how we can move forward. And I've written a couple of papers that will be published on this subject, smaller papers in the book that will be published soon that deal with these issues. I deal with economic democracy and political dependence. That's one of the titles that's coming out because we don't talk about the relationship between economics and politics. So we want to vote, but we don't have the same equality as far as economy is concerned. The two kind of go together. And I guess one last note is culture. I didn't mention culture, but one of the main accomplishments of that particular period, of Black nationalist period, is that they changed the culture of the Black community. Before they got involved, we like to refer to ourselves as Negroes. After they got involved, it was okay to be Black, and that needs to be understood and appreciated. So the cultural impact of this movement needs to be appreciated and understood as well. So I'm gonna try to write a little bit about those issues.
All right, all right. And you gonna go see Black Panther, Wakanda Forever?
I will go see it. Or might not go see it right away. I might wait a minute.
You
Yeah,
you gonna wait till the streaming? You ain't going to the
yeah.
movies.
I
Okay.
might do that.
All right, all right. Well, now again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. Barnes. You know, thank you for jumping on and just hanging out with me and having these conversations. Again, my name is Michael Anthony, owner and creative director of Pureflow Productions, here for Wakanda Week. Hope everybody goes out and see it. I'm going to be developing some more content. Matter of fact, Dr. Barnes, me and Amber think we're coming to do Through a Cultured Lens tomorrow, do a little Black Panther MCU update, so that means for the people who really don't know the Marvel movie universe, we'll come on Through a Cultured Lens and we'll at least catch you up. So that means you're not as far behind, so that you can at least be, have some context clues in there,
And make sure you send me the link so I can forward it to some of the people that I know.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir, absolutely. And and I'll just be in touch. And please, everybody, enjoy. Please go out and vote and get involved. And any last words, Dr. Barnes? You like to hit us with some gems?
No, man, I think I did that, but I appreciate you inviting me to come on this conversation, man. I really do. And I hope more people out there will support what you're trying to do. I know I'm looking forward to the second edition of Walls That Bleed.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of unfinished business there. And I thought there was a great documentary that you pulled together, but I'm looking for the second edition as well.
Yeah, that's an update that we got to give people on another live stream. Got to come up here and give people the update. Maybe that could be part of the documentary process of us on the process of trying to get this movie made, but then how nobody wants us to make this movie because nobody really wants us to make this movie.
Yeah.
There's definitely been some other, we ain't gonna get into that, but yes, we will definitely.
Yeah, you know why.
I know why, but we're gonna get it made, brother. We're gonna get it made. So, I love you, man. I appreciate you. And everybody, love, peace, and power.
Black Proud.